Welcome everybody to our Teaching the EU virtually webinar. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this afternoon, which I know for some people, depending on your school schedules, you might have already started or you're about to start. So thanks for taking the time to join us. I'm just going to give a brief welcome here and then we're going to jump right into it with our amazing speakers. But once again, thanks for coming. My name is Allison Haskins. I'm the outreach coordinator for the Center for European Studies at UNC Chapel Hill. I'll give you a lot more information about what our center does kind of at the end of these presentations, but just so you know, we do offer a lot of K-12 outreach resources on the EU, and this is one of them today, now that we've all kind of transferred to being virtual completely due to the pandemic. So we're excited that you guys have joined us. We won't talk for too long, and if you have any questions at all or want to, ask the speakers anything, please feel free to write it in the chat or write it down and save it. But we want to make sure we have lots of time for discussion at the end, so please know that we want to hear from you guys as well. So with that, and without further ado, I'm going to toss it on over to Josh Corbett, who is going to be our first speaker today.
All right. Thank you so much, Allison. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. It's really a great opportunity to be able to talk with teachers, with educators that are in the field and doing the work that needs to be done, despite the fact that it's a little different right now. And so, so we're happy to have you here, certainly. My name is Josh Corbett. I am a current doctoral candidate in the School of Education at UNC Chapel Hill. I study teacher education and curriculum. I'm also a full-time staff member with the School of Pharmacy, actually, kind of leveraging some of what I do in education to coordinate some programs and things like that over there. But most of my education chops comes from being a high school science teacher for 5 years, and then I went through the Masters of Education for Experienced Teachers program at UNC, and then I rolled into the PhD. So I'm really happy to be able to share what expertise I do have that I've gleaned over the years, and I hope that we can learn a little bit together tonight. As you might imagine, most of what I have to say as far as good pedagogy is things that you already know. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on me. I really want to make sure that we protect some time for Jason and for Colin to talk specifically about the topic, because really what it comes down to is spending more time kind of grappling with how the content works in this virtual environment, I think is really the work that needs to be done at this point. But having said that, I do have a little bit that I'd like to share with all of you. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides. Okay. So can somebody give me just like a thumbs up that they see my title slide? All right. So basically where I wanted to start was with the fact that, good education is good education, and we know that. This is one of my favorite quotes of all time. Educators should not resist surprise, but create the conditions to make it happen. It is one of the most powerful sources of intrinsic satisfaction. Talk about timely as far as that quote goes. No matter what we're doing right now, we need to be ready to be surprised, because we're going to be surprised even if we're not ready for it, right? So as far as virtual education best practices go, the really good news is that what you're already doing, what you have done in the past in classrooms, are still going to be your best practices, right? Just because we're going virtual doesn't mean that you should think that you need to abandon what you've already done. Good pedagogy is good pedagogy. That said, it does take a little bit to port some of these ideas and practices over to the virtual world. And so that's kind of the thinking that I encourage you to do. One thing that I think is a good first step is to choose one or two tools, maybe something that you already know, whether it's the Google tools that are out there, certainly the whatever learning platform that their school and district uses, whether it's Google Classroom, Moodle, Blackboard, things like that. It's really worthwhile to do a little bit of PD around those tools. You can look at LinkedIn Learning. That's a great way to look at some of these tools, certainly YouTube tutorials. Google it, right? If you have a desire to learn more about Blackboard or Moodle or whatever it might be, Canvas, there's a lot out there to learn these things, and you'll be very surprised at some of the really cool tools that are built within these. So that's what I kind of encourage you to do. As far as other sort of best practices, and I do want to point out, I do have a tiny URL, tiny.cc/CES82020. That'll bring you to this presentation, and please share it, use it. You have full access to comment. I'll comment back, that type of thing. But all of the links that I have in here are also accessible if you access the presentation. So when you're in a virtual classroom, it's obviously going to be a challenge because we're not used to some of the things that we're going to be tasked with and have to deal with in this environment. So the first thing that you need to do is really try to be as flexible as you can, right? Your plan is great. It's a great plan, but it might not be able to happen in the way that you want. So try to be flexible with time, try to be flexible with activities, try to be flexible with the fact that, technological issues are going to happen. But really what I would encourage you to do is keep students talking. If all you did is what I'm doing right now, right, talking at them, you're going to lose them. You're going to really have a lot of disengagement issues. And then of course, when you're not in the room with them, it's hard to really try to move past some of those disengagement issues. One really cool thing that I've liked to use in the past is with certain video conferencing tools. I know Zoom does this, and I believe things like Blue Jeans, I think Teams does this at this point, are breakout rooms. So you can actually control which students you put into which rooms, and they can talk in a smaller group setting while still being part of the main Zoom. So you can bring them back in and use the chat feature and all that type of thing. So I encourage you to give those a try. And a really good way to kind of play around and sandbox with some of these tools is just to get a couple of your colleagues together. And you can each give it a shot to try some of these tools. But you really do need to set some norms for discussion. Some ideas for that: you could assign a student monitor to keep an eye on people that are sort of raising their hand, whether it's virtual or not. I've also really been interested in this idea of a back channel discussion. Those of you that have used Socratic seminars in the past may have heard about back channel discussions. And I have a nice link here that brings you to a little bit of background on what that is. And one really cool thing that kind of excites me, and I know it's maybe sometimes hard to be excited about doing this, right? But one thing that excites me is that technology really can be leveraged in this environment for things that you haven't been able to do, or in the before times, right? And one thing that I'm really excited about is teachers having the possibility of maybe even meeting one-on-one or in small groups to do conferences with students or have chats students like that. It's kind of the equivalent of pulling somebody, a student back to your desk and having a chat with them, but without all of the other stimuli that might be there. You just have other stimuli to compete with at this point. And then of course, online assessments, you're going to have to adopt those on a different scale than what you've been used to. And I have a couple of good links here for formative and summative. But it just takes a little bit to kind of shift your ideas of what that might look like, but it's still all about gathering data and using it. So, it's a little bit exciting to think about some of the other things that you can do. And certainly if you put some effort into it, which of course you are, you're going to learn a lot that you can bring back into your normal classroom teaching as well. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I used to do professional developments around the flipped classroom. And really it was kind of focused on the science classroom. That's what I taught. But at this point, this is not really a new idea, right? A lot of you have heard about flipped classrooms. So I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on each slide, but I do kind of just want to buzz through them to give kind of an outline. And then perhaps I can answer some questions. I just didn't want to delete any of these slides because I want you to have them if you access them via the link at the top. But basically when you're thinking about the flipped classroom, it's this idea that instead of having a traditional lecture followed by work time, which would be, mostly lecture and a little bit of work, and then you send home homework, you flip it and you have students watch a video at home, do more discussion-based stuff, activity-based stuff in class, and then, they don't really have homework. You bring that back into class. Obviously, things are very different now, even on a different level here. But I really think that this idea is really nice to kind of revisit right now and how that looks, because you don't want to have to get on Zoom 3, 4, 5 times a day, whatever it is, and give the same type of lecture, right? You can kind of outsource that to some of the tools that we have at our disposal. And so as far as like how to flip, I, kind of give these real basic steps. Record your video. I do say it has to be you, because if a colleague does it and you share your colleague's video, it gets a little weird with students thinking that you maybe don't know the material or don't want to do it, that type of thing. Upload it to YouTube or whatever platform you're using, give students a link. And then I generally just do a very quick recap the next time you talk about the material, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. As far as the videos go, try not to do them too long. I usually say about 5 minutes is all you really want to do. Don't assign too many videos. Again, they just have so much else going on right now that you want to keep things simple and short. Keep your technology use simple. You're not trying to create anything. This could even be using a video camera or your phone to record you in front of a whiteboard, right? So I've seen people just use sliding whiteboards or even one whiteboard and make a series of short videos. Just point to things. Keep it simple. Don't do any editing besides perhaps cutting off the ends based on how much you want to put in there. And then be yourself. This is one of the biggest, most important steps toward building that rapport with your students. There's some accountability considerations here. Again, I don't really want to spend a ton of time on this. I want to be able to have it, hear from everybody. As far as why do it, I had some really great success when I was in the classroom as far as, having students be more engaged. But I will say this is, take some time if you want to really create some good videos and that type of thing. But the great thing is you get to reuse your videos for several times after that, which is really quite nice. And you develop a lot of great relationships. I really did like the fact that these videos now, you can even have them have like Google on YouTube. Google has an AI that actually creates subtitles for your videos. So those that are hard of hearing or different language students can actually translate and things like that. It's really quite nice. This isn't really a consideration right now since you don't have a ton of extra time that you're using, but something to think about when you might want to continue this in the future. And then as far as roadblocks go, you just this comes into the same flexibility piece. If students forget, you have to be flexible with, allowing for them to watch them and that type of thing. And then of course, technical difficulties will probably happen a lot more in today's day and age than just with this. So as long as you remain flexible and keep in mind that we're all in this together, this generally will go pretty well. And as far as my experiences, I saw my test scores increase. Students actually had to interact with the material. They had to think about what they were doing instead of just kind of passively taking it in. And then I actually saw interest in my subject matter increase as well. As far as programs that I've used, really any screen recording software. So you could just search for screen recording software for whatever platform you're using. I've used Camtasia and Doceri in the past. I can't speak to their usage now. I actually haven't used them in a few years, but back when I was making videos pretty regularly, they were really useful to me. So I know that was kind of quick, but I did say I just wanted to kind of go very, very quickly through everything so that we had enough time for everybody. And I'm certainly here to answer questions as we move on. But for now, Allison, remind me our order. Are we going to Jason next?
Yes, we are going to go over to Jason.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening, and I hope I can answer some questions. And please do, my email address is there, jcorbett@unc.edu. Contact me anytime. I'm happy to help.
Thank you, Josh.
Of course. So let me release the screen here. There we go.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jason.
All right, I am attempting my first time here with screen sharing a Zoom, so give me a second. All right, hopefully you can all see that. Yeah?
Okay. Yep, we can see it.
Great, so hi everybody, my name is Jason Knoll. I know it looks like Knoll, but I can assure you the K is pronounced. I'm from Wisconsin, so German heritage. I teach at Verona Area High School. I'm entering my 19th year of teaching there. And I have taught a variety of courses, all of which I've been able to incorporate the EU. I've taught AP World, I've taught AP Euro, I've taught APUSH, and currently I teach AP CompGov. And so there are definitely a lot of opportunities to teach the EU. So my introductory remarks are going to pretty much focus on why you should think about teaching the EU. And then I'm going to give you a web page with a lot of resources that maybe we can talk about later, depending on how long this goes. So, if you're an AP teacher, College Board, mentions the EU specifically in some of the curriculum. And so, you have to teach it. Now things are going to be up in the air this year with the way that, the pandemic has hit us. And so you might not get there, especially like an AP Euro. It's kind of at the tail end of things. And so if you're rushing through, but nonetheless, in a regular year, for the most part, there's a lot of AP courses where you are supposed to teach the EU. But I want you to also be thinking about, there are more than just, well, College Board says I have to. And the first one, as you can see, is that the EU really is, in my opinion, a fascinating democratic experiment. And it's led to peace. So when you're thinking about in the context of history, here we have, wrapping up, again, using AP Euro as our example, a nice positive story. If we're looking at a democratic experiment, AP Human Geography talks about the political geography of things, but also AP CompGov talks about opportunities, with multi-level governance. You can have discussions of legitimacy and discussions of sovereignty. I mean, it really is fascinating when you take a look at how it's set up. The second reason that I think people should start thinking about teaching the EU is the fact that when you think about the last 3 administrations, there's been a bit of a pivot away from Europe and transatlantic relations. And, when you think about the Cold War, it was all about transatlantic relations and how the US and Europe could work together. Well, this post-Cold War generation, if we still want to try and not just maintain, but even strengthen transatlantic relations, the post-Cold War generation needs to understand why the EU is important. And even if you consider some of our younger colleagues are post-Cold War teachers. For the most part, the Cold War emphasized, especially in terms of trade and security. And so those issues are still relevant. Even though the Cold War ended 30 years ago, those issues are still relevant. When you look at trade, there's actually a really cool resource that the EU delegation has that shows the different trade with the US as a whole, but then each state. And so no matter where you are, you could take a look at what the EU does as far as trade and investment goes. There are a lot of other opportunities for the US and the EU to cooperate. Energy is a big one, especially with LNG and Russia. Cybersecurity, when we're looking at elections. And even climate change, there's the European Green Deal. And so there are opportunities here. And I think that's, one of the reasons why we want to teach is that, Europe does matter. 3, the US can learn a lot from the EU. At a time when global problems require global solutions, the EU's emphasis for multilateralism provides students with some really important lessons about working together toward a common solution. Additionally, there are a lot of policy areas where we can perhaps sort of take a comparative lens, whether it's education, or it could be the European Pillar of Social Rights, again, the European Green Deal with climate change, looking at the circular economy, right? Those are things that you might not necessarily teach in an AP class, but you could definitely approach them in other classes. Fourth reason is learning about the EU does increase students' global awareness, especially, when we're looking at we're moving away from a unipolar world to perhaps multipolar or a zero-pole world. The EU is trying to become a little bit more of a global player. And this is really evident, especially when you take a look at their humanitarian and development aid. They donate a lot of money and spend a lot of money on countries, especially to help with the Sustainable Development Goals, which is part of the UN's agenda for 2030 in sustainable development. The Sustainable Development Goals are at the core of what the EU does. They mentioned that very specifically within the communique that came out about the Green Deal the SDGs are at the core and influence of the policies of the EU. And so, when you think about the global awareness and sustainable development goals, I think there's a really good opportunity there. And finally is that the EU isn't just the sole property of social studies. Although obviously it fits naturally in social studies, there are a lot of different ways and a lot of different classes where you can teach the EU. When you think about the number of official languages, there are actually 24 official languages. And so I think, in just various language courses, teachers can bring in the EU. Music, thinking about Beethoven and the Ode to Joy, which is the anthem, so to speak, of the EU. Also, fun fact, the EU actually has a Spotify channel. And so they have playlists where you can listen to European music. Art, right? Even culinary. If you followed the EU delegations, the member states delegations on May 9th, which is Europe Day, usually they have an open house. This year, however, they had for the whole month of May, a website which linked to each member state's embassy and something special that they were sharing to the public. And a lot of them shared recipes. So, if you are family and consumer education, you could think about, food diplomacy. All right, so those are my quick, here's why you should be doing this, besides the fact that College Board tells us. I want to quickly show you then this resource that I have put together here. If I can figure out how to do that. Allison, do you have any idea how I might be able to? Oh, there we go.
Oh, there it is.
All right. So I have put together a collection of resources. Hopefully you all can still see this. Yeah? Okay. These are all different websites that I've gone to and I've used for my classes. I've recommended them to other US educators. Obviously, you're not going to use every single one in a single year. But I've broken it down into sort of a couple different categories. And again, maybe if there's time later, I can go more in depth. One is just some websites with activities, lessons plans, and other teaching resources. And you can see that here I have the one that's hosted by UNC. I've got some basic information about the EU itself. These two right here, the European Union, A Guide for Americans, and Europe in 12 Lessons, I think are excellent starting points for people, even if you don't teach an AP class, to bring the EU in. EU institutions and bodies, go straight to the source if you want to know what the European Council does, or the Council of the EU, the Commission, Parliament, and so on. The EU Centers of Excellence, like UNC Chapel Hill. There are a number of centers of excellence across the country that conduct K-12 outreach. So no matter where you're located, I think that there's a good chance to reach out there. Podcasts. I know during the pandemic, one thing that I've actually been doing more is listening to podcasts. These are the four on the EU that I would recommend that are good general for teachers and students. They're not very wonky. Some are a little bit more current issues based. And then social media. You can actually search for the EU on 11 different social media platforms that they're on. They have a website for that. Spotify, Twitter, and then some think tanks. So all sorts of different resources there available for you. And I'd be more than happy to answer questions when the time comes. And Allison, I'm gonna let you take care of how to get out of this.
If you just do stop screen sharing, let's see if I can. There it goes.
Perfect.
All right. Now we're going to toss it over to Colin. Thank you very much, Jason. And Colin, I'm going to share my screen for you. Give me 1 second. And Colin, you just tell me whenever you want me to click through.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Colin Baker. Thank you, Emily. Yes, it's my missing EU shirt. I lost my citizenship this year when Britain left the EU. It's my sad shirt. But anyway, I teach, as you can see there, at Blacksburg High School in Virginia. I teach AP Euro and Modern World History. I also do quite a lot of work for the College Board and the Right now I'm the co-chair of the National Development Committee for AP Euro. So we're going to talk, I think about half of the people here, approaching half, are AP Euro teachers. But we're certainly going to make this interdisciplinary. Like Jason has said, fits so many courses, can have a connection to AP Euro. And that's kind of the theme of this presentation I've got here, is that we want to connect our students to the modern world, right? We don't want to make our courses disconnected from reality, from the lives they live. And in AP history classes, we can definitely, there's different ways to connect our course with the modern world and make the course even more relevant to them, rather than something in the past, it affects the present and vice versa. So if we can go to the next slide, Alison. Thank you. Okay, so here's my main point, that studying about Europe today, and the EU particularly, helps students understand their modern world. And this person, even though he's speaking in front of a sign that says European Commission, he's actually the Council President, Michel. There's a new set of leadership at the end of last year. And of course, the reason that we're doing virtual classes is because of coronavirus, right? So let's not duck the issue. Let's bring it in at the start of the year if we can, and talk about what is the EU doing, and how are European countries responding differently to the United States, for example, and why is that? That's something that you could make a connection with right away. Okay, can we go to the next slide? This is the actual council. There's different levels of floors, and I believe this is the actual, the highest level, which I went last year in June with the Center of European Studies at Chapel Hill, and we got on one of the lower levels, but this is the typical arrangement where the heads of state, the member states, meet and they hammer out agreements, like they just did last month, a couple of weeks ago, on how to respond with basically a debt arrangement for the very first time for the EU to take on some type of collective debt in order to deal with coronavirus. And these, of course, these are terms that are applicable to all of our AP history courses, political, scientific, cultural responses, and the EU is involved in all of these today. And in terms of health, I'm talking about AP Euro, but I'm sure this is the case in AP US, I know, with industrialization, and AP Human Geo and AP World. Coronavirus is something that teachers are already comparing to other outbreaks in the past, and how do governments respond to that, and how does science react to it. And all throughout AP European history, these are things from the late Middle Ages through the industrial era, up until the present, where you can make connections between European responses then and European responses today. And the main point I'm hoping to get across just briefly here is that when we teach the past as affecting the present, and the present having a context in the past, then what we're doing in our AP Euro classes or AP World, AP Human Geo, is showing the relevance of our course to their lives, right? We're enhancing their understanding both of our course and of current events and modern day Europe. Okay, so on the next slide, I believe I have 4 ways. Can we go to the next one? All right, so 4 ways to teach the EU, and the first way is what Jason mentioned that sometimes happens at the end of modern history classes, and certainly AP Euro classes, is right at the end in Unit 9 and we just don't get to it, or you get to it in the last week or 2 of school and it's rushed. So I'm suggesting that we, especially this year, when a lot of us are teaching hybrid or virtual and have less time with our students, it's going to be very hard, even in a normal year, to get the EU in. So I'm going to suggest that we try not do approach number 1 there, but try and do some of these other ways to teach about the EU, and many of which lend themselves to virtual instruction. So what I'm planning to do, and I've done this for many years, is first day of class, bring in a current event about the EU. trying to teach that is relevant on day one of our course, and it's going to be relevant throughout our whole course. So current events is probably another way that teachers try and do this, but sometimes that feels kind of forced as well. Let's do one every Friday, then you've got to find something to fit the, right? So that's an okay method of introducing Europe, modern Europe and the EU, but I would recommend steps 3 and 4, which I'm going to explain in the next couple of slides. They fit much better with the themes of our courses and historical thinking skills too, right? Make deeper connections, and particularly connections over time, which is number 4. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so cartoons. I'm going to recommend The Economist has some great cartoons, although this is actually from, I think it's a Dutch or Danish cartoonist. This could be an example of way number 2, how to introduce the EU in your class at the start. You could have a summer assignment, right? And you could issue this ahead of time, or you could even do it day 1 of class and then it's due on day 2. This is the recent agreement they talked about, the European Coronavirus Relief Fund. And then there's the Frugal 4. You can see 4 countries around the side there with flags who are kind of resisting. You can see France and Germany at the top there, their initiative here. So you could give students an assignment at the start of the year, and this could be one thing that they could do. Or number 4, you could ask them, on this slide here at the bottom, number 4, you could ask them to research an event over the summer in Europe that has affected the world or the United States, or is relevant to them in their lives. And often a lot of European regulations involving consumer products, Apple and data protection and things like that, right? Things that we might not think of right away as a connection, but teens with their social media will recognize right away, oh, that thing they're doing in Europe is affecting how I use my iPhone, right? And so they could have a different connection. Get them to tell you one that they find relevant. All right, next slide, please, Allison. All right, so this is from The Economist, and I use The Economist in my class a lot. It has lots of great cartoons, but it often makes connections between the past and the present. And of course, another, and this is method number 3, I would suggest. Bring in regular, deep connections between the events you're talking about in class and modern Europe today, right? So obviously over this summer, there's been lots of discussion about Black Lives Matter, not just in the United States, but in European countries too. And the EU's issued official statements, and there's different reactions in different member states. What this article in The Economist is talking about is the Enlightenment roots of liberalism, and there's definitely Enlightenment roots of racial identity. And that's a thing you can follow from the Enlightenment up to today. There's a connection between the past and current Europe. You could take individual countries, like Britain is dealing with, of course, its legacy of slave trading and wealth from the sugar trade. And they are tearing down their statues too. There's one very famous one in Bristol of Edward Colston. Or in Brussels, in Belgium, they're dealing with the legacy of imperialism in Congo in Africa. And when I was there last summer, it was interesting. There's it's the Belgium Military Museum right in the heart of Brussels, right next to the EU district. And a few of us went and wandered around it. And their theme of their museum, which was actually set up during the time of King Leopold, was Belgium independence and Belgium's kind of plucky little stature as this proud country, always invaded from either side, either by the French. The main exhibition starts with Napoleon invading Belgium, and you've got, of course, Germany at various times. And the main themes of the museum are kind of Belgium liberty and pride in their ability to resist oppressors, right? And then there's a small section on King Leopold and Belgian Congo. That's kind of not glossed over, but it's definitely doesn't fit with the narrative right? Well, in Belgium today, they're finally wrestling with that narrative, right? So that's a way you could either as a summer assignment or a regular connection. When you get to imperialism, you can talk about how today that's affecting Belgium today. All right, thanks, Alison. Next slide. Okay, so I would suggest the best way, though, here's the last thing here, the best way to bring in modern Europe and the EU in a virtual setting in your class is by using this theme of the course, right? There are 7 themes of our course, and this one is perfect for teaching the modern EU throughout AP Euro, from the start all the way through. There's a great short video there comparing European identity versus national identity. Next slide, please. All right, here it is in the framework. You'll see there at the top it says definitions and perceptions of regional, cultural, national, and European identity have developed. Here's the key thing, and being challenged over time. So this is a theme, of course, like all our themes. That doesn't just, not just in the end, post-World War II. You can talk about European and national identity at the start of our course and in the middle, with all sorts of political and cultural effects. And then that will help you build up to and regularly keep connecting to the European Union and its form of European identity and the clash between the two, national and European identity. All right, next slide, please. So, of course, European Union is a modern day version of a European identity. But European identity at the start of our course focused more on religious identity, particularly Catholic, right? So you can look at that as a similarity or a difference to modern European secular identity. Often it comes out of the French Revolution and Napoleon. So there's legacies of that. And then, of course, there's World War II features very prominently in Europe's rejection of nationalism. All right, next slide. Just got a couple left. Okay, so obviously Congress of Vienna, was that an early attempt to have a grand alliance, to have a European Union? And why did Britain not be as involved as it could have been here? Of course, that's leading into Brexit we can talk about, which is another very teachable moment that's still rumbling on that we can definitely refer to throughout our course. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so just the last couple here. Each month, I believe there's a Eurobarometer poll. How important is your identity, you know, your European identity versus your national identity? And one interesting thing you can ask, again, prompt students with this on the left there, you've got many of the countries who agree or strongly agree that being European is as important are from Eastern Europe. And so again, you can bring in, well, what's the legacy of that? Where's the context for that? Why is it that so many Eastern European countries particularly feel pro-European or more pro-European than some of the others? And of course, that leads into the communism and the Cold War, feudalism, even before that, right? So there's definitely ways to bring in the EU, not just political union, but identity matters throughout our course, and that's the way I teach it as well. I think I've got 1 or 2 slides left. Next one. Oh yeah, 2 slides left. Here is a list of very short, when you do get to the end of the course, although again, this is something you could bring in earlier, particularly number 1, the EU explained, because a short little clip there at the start, it's just 5 minutes. That's a great thing. You can even start your year with that, because it goes into what is Europe geographically, socially, culturally, and it makes lots of connections to the Renaissance, again, to the Enlightenment, right, to the Reformation, the effects of that on modern Europe, right? You've got Catholic half and the Protestant half still, and how does that affect how countries, their culture today? So that's a clip you could actually start your year with as well. The others are more in detail. Many of these probably Jason's got on his site as well. And lastly, last slide. Thank you. I have my own website too, on European and national identities, the theme I was talking about before. And in it, there's a whole bunch of, aligned to each period of our course, ways to bring in modern Europe throughout the different periods of our course. So I can probably release this later to Alison and she can share it with folks. But I have a index of all the different, here's a paper version, but I can release this online. And I've updated it recently of how to bring in early modern Europe, how to bring in themes, particularly identity themes, that connect or change over time, similarities between early modern Europe and modern Europe in the EU today. And that's pretty much what this website's all about. So it's got PowerPoints and lesson plans and DBQs and all sorts of stuff that could definitely be relevant to AP World, perhaps to AP US and Human Geo as well. So that's a resource everyone's welcome to use. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Colin. All right. So I'm going to finish up now by showing you guys a few of our CES resources that kind of complement pretty well what we've been talking about so far. I'm going to go ahead and put the link to our website here in the chat. You can follow along if you'd like, but I'll go ahead and share my screen too. So as I mentioned before, the Center for European Studies, we are, as well as a curriculum granting center at UNC, we have a Euro major and a TAM transatlantic master's track that you can do. We are also a Jean Monnet Center of Excellence. We have a grant from the EU that runs for 4 years that designates us a Jean Monnet Center of Excellence. And we are also a National Resource Center, which is the title comes with a 4-year grant as well. Both of these grants have different stipulations for outreach that we have to do. So a lot of our work at the center is outreach with community members, and some of our most important constituents are K-12 teachers. So we have a lot of resources for educators. This includes community college and minority serving institution educators, but most of it is for K-12 teachers. It's changing a little bit with the coronavirus. We have EU-to-U workshops. This is something where we would bring an expert to you. In the time of the pandemic, we will be doing these virtually now. So if you would like an expert from UNC to talk to your classroom, we can set that up via Zoom. So if you're interested in that, you know, all costs are on us. And if you need someone to kind of come in and give you a day off to talk about the EU, we're happy to provide someone for you. Just at the very end, you can fill out the short interest form down here, or just send me an email if you're interested in that. So we do provide kind of expert faculty members, graduate students, and sometimes even people who are who've worked for the EU before. We have one of our faculty members who worked for the German mission to the EU, you know, people like that who can talk to your classrooms. The Brussels study tour is something we do every year. Colin had mentioned it, he was on it. This past year we've had to postpone it, but next year all things considered, we would like to do it again. We're planning to do it again. We will have applications go out for the Brussels study tour, which will be in June of 2021. So if you're interested in that, come check out this page. It is funded. You have to put a little bit of your money up, just like a fee or two, but we do give you reimbursement for the flight and cover the hotel. The United Teacher Fellows Program is a fellowship that we've gotten money from the EU to do. If you're a North Carolina teacher, this is particularly for you. For teachers from outside the state, unfortunately, we cannot fund you to do the fellowship program, but it is a funded fellowship program where you spend 8 months with us being a fellow. Hopefully you will come to us in person in Chapel Hill. We do a few webinars. You come back to us in person in Chapel Hill, and you do a lesson plan. We just had our first cohort finish up, and we'll have applications for the second cohort go out soon. And then we have EU and NC study tours. These happen typically every year. Once again, because of the pandemic, I'm not sure if we'll be having one this academic year, but they're in-person workshops. We had a really interesting one this past March that we were able to do right before everything shut down, but it was with only AP Euro teachers. So sometimes we do mix it up in terms of topic and in terms of who participates. So that would be something you can keep an eye out on. If you're looking for an online resource to use this fall for the EU, we have what's called Teaching the EU Toolkits. I think most of everyone who responded were high school teachers, so I'll go ahead and click on the high school ones. This is basically a big booklet of lessons we had made a few years ago on the EU. Everything is here online. You can see the table of contents for it. So as you can see, you know, it starts with Europe in a nutshell, then there's a few warm-up activities, the lessons and materials, and you know, and they're all kind of guided by essential questions. Who are the Europeans? What is Europe like? What is the EU? And they come with links and everything. That's the table of contents, and then you can come down here and see that the toolkits are actually posted down here. So the European People High School lesson plan, here's the lesson plan for that and the links that correspond with it. Those are the toolkits. And then we have a lesson plan page that I've been working on updating as we go. So for example, from our UNC group, who are all AP Euro teachers, I have almost all their lessons that they created from that. So if you're interested in seeing other lessons that teachers have made, specifically for AP Euro, I would direct you to that. But just in general for classrooms from the Brussels Study Tour, we have people make lesson plans as well. And we have K-12, community college, and four-year college plans here. And I'm about to post in the next few weeks stuff from our E-United Fellows program. So we're kind of constantly updating lesson plans here. So if you're ever needing a little bit of help, or you know, would like to try a new sort of lesson or see what other teachers with us are doing, please visit this webpage. Most of you are probably on my educator newsletter, but we do have an educator newsletter, and I send it out twice a semester. So please sign up for that. You can see our old ones here. I advertise all our webinars and all our applications and everything on there. And then we just have a collection of a few digital resources. I'm not going to get too deep into it. You can peruse these as you'd like. We have a few, you know, in-house things we've created in-house, such as these business briefs. EU infographics are made by the EU. We also have a student who makes infographics, pages on EU literature. All this stuff is here for you to peruse and use in your classrooms as you'd like. It's all, I would say, high school level. Some of it you could probably use lower, but most of it's high school level and beyond. And then another thing I wanted to show you, there's two things. Number one, if you're a North Carolina teacher, we've started doing standards alignment. So if there's some part of the EU you want to incorporate into your classroom and you need to know what standard it fits into, you can email us and tell us what topic, you know, let's say you want to talk about trade in the EU, you can email us and let us know, and we can find certain standards where that comes together. Or if you don't know anything about the EU, but you have a standard you know you need to teach to, you can email us that standard, and we can find something else out about the EU to help you out with that. The last thing I wanted to show you, it's kind of tucked away on the E-United side, is our teacher resources guide that was made this past year. It echoes a lot of the same links you've seen from Jason and Colin, but it's a big PDF full of clickable links for resources on the EU. We start with a few of our CS resources, but then we get to official European Union resources, books and references, journal articles, news articles, think tanks and databases, news sources, movies, literature, podcasts, and Twitter accounts. So for example, these are our resources. And then you get down to official European Union resources. A couple other, you know, of key kind of publications the EU has created, books and references that are available at UNC Library, journal articles, a few of them are available online, and then all the news articles are available online, think tanks and databases, news sources, movies that we recommend, and where to find them as well. So if you want to show them in your classroom, a lot of them are available at a very small price on Prime, or there's a few that are available on Netflix or Vimeo for free. Literature, we've linked to the European Union Prize for Literature and a few podcasts. This is, and then under Twitter accounts, we only have Jason Knoll right now. We're still working on more, but he's a great Twitter account to follow. So yeah, this is what I would maybe consider to be a living document. So, you know, we'd like to update it yearly, but that's kind of the big stuff that CES offers right now. And the big thing we offer is just support for everyone. I'd also like to put out there, if you have any questions or you're having difficulties filling your lessons, or you know, you have a lesson you want to do, but you're like, maybe I can tie it into the EU, or maybe CS can just create this for me because I'm burnt out, like, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're going to do our best to help you out because we know how crazy these times are. They're crazy for us too. And we want to help you teach the EU any way we can. So do not hesitate to reach out. Email me. And also just want to plug our other centers. I'll put it in the chat here, but areastudies.unc.edu. If you're interested in other regions of the world, we have 5 area study centers at UNC. They do similar work to us. They all have different kind of levels of grants and involvement, but everyone does kind of similar work if you're interested in another region of the world. So with that, I'm going to thank our speakers and open it up to maybe just open discussion. If anyone has a specific question they'd like to ask, you can type it in the chat, or if a topic people want to brainstorm with people, or however, we'd love to hear from you guys now.